Right then, another A6 video. So we've just took it off the dyno with the DPF deletes. It's done 374 horsepower. We wanted to push it a bit more, but rather than mess about on the standard turbos, we're going to get these whacked on, and then we've got a few other upgrades to try after this. So we've talked about this on the first video that we did, because we've had this quite a while now, so it's a little bit dusty. But basically, both these turbos have been completely re-engineered. They've got different VNT pack in the little one, and different wheels in the turbine and the compressor on both. See, they're both machined from solid wheels and everything, so they are they're going to do what we need to do. So we can quickly look at how this works. I've talked about them before, and it's not majorly complicated, but it's not easy to explain. But starting from the air inlet side, so your air filter comes in here, so that pipe is there. So you've got your air coming in your big one, and that obviously gets pushed, ignore that for now, into your little one. So there's a valve on this here, so we'll ignore that. It goes into your little one, out your little one, and into your engine. But then here on the valve, which we'll put a picture of that up when we take it off, because we've not actually got one off the car on one of these. This is like a little popper valve that when the big turbo's making pressure, it pops that open, which kind of bypasses the little one. A little bit of air will still be coming through the little one, because it'll still be turning, so it'll be sucking and pushing it out. But really then that turns this in from, when this is shut, you're getting a compound arrangement, so the big one's compressing and pushing into the little one, and then eventually it'll turn into a sequential setup. That's on the inlet side. And obviously with a small one being a lot smaller and being variable geometry, that'll spool up quicker than the big one. So as you can see, we've got electronic control on the little one, and then we've got two mechanical controls on the exhaust side of the big one. So, and then obviously that's a mechanical. So then when you get onto the exhaust side, which is, let's try and figure out the best way of looking at it, but this is where the exhaust gases come in from the engine, so from each bank, one side and then the other, and that comes into here, which then pushes, it's really hard, I can't see what you can see either, which is not good. So this pushes into this flange here, which pushes into the big one and the little one at the same time. But then you've got a little valve here, which is a little changeover valve, which will open when we want to start bypassing the little one and into the big one. So you've got sort of, it's a mechanical valve, mechanical flap, like a wastegate flap, but when this needs to open is kind of dictated to by when this popper valve wants to go. So it's quite difficult software wise to get that to work. If this were electronically controlled, you just set this PSI, that opens, this PSI, that opens, and you get them working in tandem. So then when that opens, the little one's bypassed. Obviously at that point the bypass should be here, so then you've only got all the exhaust gas pretty much going through the big one, which then has got a conventional type wastegate, except this works on vacuum, so it'll fail safe. So you've got a conventional wastegate that'll control the overall boost. So you've got, put simply, it's really difficult to explain, the initial boost hit is controlled by the variable geometry on the little turbo, and the overall boost is controlled by the wastegate flap on the big turbo. So if that doesn't work properly, it'll be laggy. If this doesn't work properly, it could overboost or it could underboost. But then the big thing with these, and the hard thing to tune, is that changeover between them. So that you can see on the dyno when we talked about it on the previous video, you can see when the little turbo starts to die off, the big one then comes in stronger. You want to try and minimise that overlap, and that's not just on a dyno pull, that's transient when you're just cruising or when you're tipping, so it's pretty difficult. So this is a big turbo, very complicated but simple in a sense. Hopefully we've got them all matched up pretty well. Otherwise it's going to be a lot of tuning work. If we've mechanically got them pretty evenly matched, it should just bolt on and make more power, make it leaner, and then we add more boost and add more fuel to make, or add more fuel to make more power, and then start adding more boost as well. So we shall see. So we'll get a camera on Paul doing this, and we'll see how long it takes him to do. But it's quite an involved job, and there's a couple of little tappings I want him to make in this turbo so we can log where the exhaust pressures are, and obviously we can log the boost pressure between stages on this sensor and the boost sensor. So see how long it takes him. So, Paul's managed to get all the turbo off, so this vast space you see here is where that used to be. So we'll put a picture of what it looks like stripped off, just so you can see it a bit better, but this is the little popper valve. So as you can see, that's got like next to no spring pressure in there whatsoever. But how it works is the little turbo's blowing in behind it, so if that's doing, say, 20 psi, this would probably have to, with a spring, and that probably 21, 22 psi, maybe even a bit more, just to even start to crack that open. So, in essence, your little turbo's never, your big turbo's never going to fully work until it's making more pressure than your big one. So, get these small ones. So, hopefully I'm not confused people. So these are the units. As you can see, they've got lifting eyes on them for a reason. They weigh an absolute ton. Paul's put a couple of little tappings in for the exhaust manifold pressure, so that's the pre-turbo, and then we've put one in it's put in EGR blank for now, but we're probably going to change that and put it into the EGR pipe, so then we can put everything, all the DPF and everything back on. So it's off. This is just going to go to one side. We'll bung our oil ways up, and that can stay there until either we need it again or we just sell it. This one will be back on. We're probably about 3 hours deep just getting it off, and then it's probably going to be 3, maybe 4 hours to put it back together. So got all the gaskets and all the seals and everything that we need. So shouldn't be too long. Have to get cracked on. Right then, so the A6, everybody's been asking us about it. It's been a little bit annoying that we've not had much more footage, but to be fair, it's been getting used a lot and we haven't really had much time to get it on the dyno and have a play with it. But I've noticed a little bit of a noise coming from it that we're getting a little bit worse, a little bit of a rattly, grating noise that sort of went up and down with RPMs, not usually under load, just randomly. Sounded like the gearbox area. If it were a manual, you'd probably say it was the dual mass flywheel. So it works out pretty nice, because I just had the palaver with the Amarok draining it and thinking I'd drain more out than I got back in, but turns out I'm probably not that far wrong. So I decided, let's drain it all out and see what we get out of it. So this is what came out. So I don't know if you can see, but that is 5 litres. It's just under, there's a little bit of residue here and there. To get all that out, we did disconnect these pipes here, which are a bit easier to get to on this than they are on the Amarok. We disconnected them that go to the heat exchanger, and probably another half a litre, maybe even a litre came out of that, and then just blowed it out with the airline and got as much as we can out. But like I said before, these have got, I think this exact kit, 8.25 litre fill from completely empty, and only 5's come out. So, and that was when it were up to temp as well, 80 odd degrees when we dropped it. So it came out pretty quick as well. And only 5's come out. But the big concern was when we took the fill level bung out non-Kmart whatsoever, so it's probably a little bit underfilled. It's done 50 odd thousand miles, never been done before. But this is a little bit concerning as well. This is a magnet, and there's a lot of stuff that sticks to the magnet. It's yeah, not ideal. So whether that's expected or not, I'd probably say not. Whether that's going to be the source of our problems, I'm not too sure, but for the sake of a bit of oil and a filter, I said to Paul, rather than stripping this down and ruining the car now, it still can be used. If the gearbox is dead, it's dead. So what we'll do, we've got the oil back in now, we've squirted a load in, drive it tonight. When I come back in tomorrow, we'll just drop that plug out, and that's the most efficient way we can think of doing it. What I did with the Amarok, trying to do it by the book, were absolutely painful. So I'll leave Paul to finish what he's doing with this. That's and that's sorted. So the other thing everybody's been asking about is the hybrid turbos. So we had a lot of playing about getting it to work, 'cause obviously the problem you've got is with sort of compound, sequential, whatever sort of turbo setup, is the changeover between them, how much boost pressure you want from the little one and how much boost pressure you want from the big one. Quite difficult to just put a big set of turbos and it just work. It'd be nice if it worked like that, but definitely not in this case. So these are the graphs we ended up managing to get afterwards. So the 374, they're the blue lines, 550 foot-pound. That's the standard turbos after the DPFs were deleted and before the big turbos. That were literally just before. Then we put the big turbos on, and we got 409 and 580, 590 foot-pound torque, whatever it is, something like that. But it's just not enough, in my opinion, to warrant the cost. I think if you've already got a damaged turbo and the 2.5 grand, 2,800 quid or something like that for a new turbo, putting one of these on, which would probably be a similar amount, not too sure with it being a prototype, but it would be expensive still, then it's a good idea. But changing a good turbo out to get 30, 40 horsepower, not really sure it's worthwhile. And when you're driving it on the road, we did a lot of tuning on the dyno, got it to put these really nice curves out, and even still, you can still see the sort of, not the changeover, but you can see a little lump at the top where it actually makes most of the power, which is not the RPM that you're always in anyway. On the road, you can feel sort of, sometimes you get a little, sort of, you feel it really strong and then it gets stronger again when the changeover occurs. And that's very gear dependent, and there's not that many maps for that. So it's a difficult one. So we've not canned it completely. We just got really busy when we first did this, and then the gearbox noise started and we only just had a chance to get it in and get that sorted. So we'll see. We might revisit this and get a bit more out of it. We're probably at the point now where the injectors are out of puff as well, or very close to being out of puff. A big set of injectors would gain us a bit of horsepower because we are EGT limited again. Turning the boost up just made the EMPs a little bit worse. Whether we can get a bit more with it. Once you change the injectors, it sort of changes everything again. You can run a bit more boost sometimes. Maybe change the timing a little bit, because that's a big thing on these bi-turbos. The timing versus boost can be manipulated quite a lot, accidentally or intentionally. So that's where we are with that. Not the update everybody wanted. I'd have liked to add a product on the website and say, buy these, and we'd sell probably 10 straight away, because we've got loads of people asking for them all the time. Whether they've got the money in place to do it, because they're not cheap, but I think for what you'd pay for 2 turbos, it's probably pretty reasonable. But we'll see. We've not quit. We're probably going to do a bigger one. I think the big one needs to be bigger and the small one needs to stay the same, and maybe a little bit of playing around inside. But we'll see. And we'll be back in touch with everybody when we do something a bit more interesting.